I'm sure some people seeing that will say this is an oxymoron because trauma is bad. And now you say you want to maximize it. Do you want to maximize my problem? Oh, well. I draw something from one of the ancient scripts that says all things work together. They never work apart.
And for good.
They also work together for good.
For good.
So bad can work together for good. So trauma can work together for
good.
You're the one that just said it. So.
Why is this for good?
So we know that trauma is bad. It creates in you what they call a survival mindset that can lead to chronic stress, anxiety, and all of that. And if they are not resolved, they tend to practically alter your life and your living. Such that, I mean, we have spoken about trauma on this program like 3 to 4 times back to back. Understanding trauma, parent-child trauma, parenting trauma, coping with trauma, and all of those things. But now, if you can't cope, can you convert? And that's what this conversation this morning is about. And we have Miracle Ihuoma with us. He's a clinical psychologist and family life therapist. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me, sir.
The first time you came here, you were telling us how easy it is to untrauma yourself. If there's no such word, I know, but I didn't know there was. How many years ago did we start saying unfriend?
Right.
Instead of just kill, you say unalive.
Unalive.
So if I say untrauma, I'm creative at it as well. So first of all,
get to the dictionary. Don't worry.
Let's first of all ask you: is it possible to maximize trauma from your experience?
Yes, it is. It is. And just like you rightly said earlier, that all things can then work together for good, even though it was a bad experience, it can then be converted to something that ultimately leads to purpose, to healing, and to a lesson that even other people can begin to learn from. And we have, for example, people who have converted their trauma into a testimony, if I might use that word. I can give examples like people like Joyce Meyer, for example, who was raped by her father consistently until she was maybe 16 years old, and maybe even got pregnant at some point. But then as a result of that trauma, of course, it wasn't that the trauma was a good thing, but she was able to maximize it to become something that she now uses as an inspiration for younger people to say it doesn't matter what you're going through, you can get healed and you can find purpose within it. Oprah Winfrey is another example as well, who also went through a series of abuse for many years and then converted that into a strong story that drove her, up the ranks in her career, and also has become an inspiration to many people. Became the richest black woman and the most influential on many levels as well. So people can practically learn from their trauma, convert it to a testimony, that others can learn from.
So let's delineate or differentiate between maximizing trauma and coping, using what you call coping mechanisms. Some people use their trauma or traumatic experience become their advocacy campaigns, where they use that advocacy to cope with their own situation. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. Healing is not the same thing as coping. Okay. And we must understand what coping is. Coping mechanisms in themselves are not wrong, because that's your brain or nervous system's way of creating a defense for what happened to you before not to repeat itself again. So if somebody, for example, goes through a traumatic experience, they can develop avoidance, where they now don't want to form intimate relationships with other people anymore. That's their brain's way of trying to avoid that same abandonment that they may have gone through in the past. But it only serves them in the interim, because ultimately is going to be to their own detriment. So that's coping. That's not healing, because it's going to affect their relationships with family members, with their partners if they decide to maybe get married or something. So even though that may have shielded them from intimate relationships that created the abandonment in the first place, it doesn't deal with the issue from the root, which is now healing. Healing is now that I have confronted the issue, I've found perspective, and now I can confidently go into really intimate relationships, form those intimacies and bonds with other people, while I have learned the lessons, that of what happened to me in the past. That's how healing is different from coping.
Right, and you stated that when someone is going through this trauma, there's a state of overthinking that asks, why me? And there's also productive thinking that asks that, how do I get out of this? How does this person navigate this trauma storm to get to that productive thinking level when they're still stuck in the why?
Yes. So you must be objective, right? When you're going through a traumatic experience, or if you feel like you are traumatized based on an incident in the past, you must understand that asking yourself why me would only keep you wallowing in the mud of the trauma that you've gone through. But shifting your focus to now ask, okay, how can I get out of this? How can I make progress? How can I make the necessary adjustments? Would drive you into finding lasting solutions that would effectively and objectively help you come out of that traumatic state that you are in. So yes, you must understand the difference between why me and how. Yeah, so how helps you to see the strategies, right, and then helps you to see how you can come out of it. Another question that you can also ask is why, not why me. Why helps you to dig into the root cause of why what happened to you. That can help you gain perspective that can now make your how more effective. Because sometimes people ask how without asking why. And if you ask how without asking why, you might be developing strategies for the wrong issue.
What's the difference between why
and why
vis-a-vis the how?
Okay,
the how. There's a why me that makes you wallow.
Yeah.
There's a why which makes you think that why did this happen?
Exactly.
And there's a how of getting out. So how do you marry the why and the how to get out of it? How do you marry those two?
So the why helps you to do what we call root cause analysis.
Yeah.
So you are able to know what exactly caused this, what exactly brought me to this state. And that helps you to now know what the real issue is. Because sometimes I've always said that the problem is not always the problem, right? Sometimes people think about a particular problem, and then that's not really the problem. What the problem is might even be deeper than what you think the problem is. So asking why helps you get to the root of what the problem really is, and that now gives you perspective as to how you now need to resolve that issue. For example, if you don't ask why and you just think that, oh, my relationships are not working, maybe I need to learn more about relationships, maybe I need to learn more about how to relate with people. Now that is how, but because you haven't gotten the root cause, which is why, you might be solving the wrong problem. The why, if you ask yourself why, you might not realize that, okay, maybe I'm actually dealing with abandonment from my childhood. And that is what I need to deal with. So once I deal with that abandonment issue, then I can relate better with people. So you see how why is different from, or can help you even understand why. How?
It's sounding like, someone can be in a situation, and rather than first of all diagnose what the problem is, the first thing you're looking for, essentially what you're saying is, when someone is in a situation, rather than first of all find out the root cause and all of that, some kind of diagnosis, you look for medication.
Exactly.
And the medication doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then you now say you have village people.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Now, we know that trauma is damaging. Let's be clear. It's very, very damaging. It's bad. It's very, very limiting. And it's all mental most of the time.
Yeah.
And it's not what happened. is our perception of what happened,
exactly,
our ownership of what happened, and our reluctance or inability to get past what happened. So we're kind of stuck.
Yeah.
This much you explained to us the last time you spoke about this. Now, if one is going to maximize it, what are the first steps? From what you said the last time, you talked about, first of all, accepting that this happened. You know, so after all of that, there are some who don't even want to ever go there again. They don't want to refer to it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't even want to be identified with anything of that experience. So how do you maximize that if you don't want to revisit that experience in any way, manner, shape, or form?
Yeah, that's also a form of defense mechanism. That's a defense mechanism right there. You know, there is a defense mechanism, for example, called denial. You know, sometimes people can deny what has happened to them. They can actually deny it or deny the effect or the magnanimity of what happened to them. And sometimes people can also display another defense mechanism called repression, where sometimes people can literally forget what has happened to them in the past, so that they can't even remember it at all. So that even when somebody was there when it happened and is trying to remind them, they can't remember it. Yeah, because they have taken or pushed that traumatic experience into the recesses of their subconscious or unconscious mind. But it's there, but they don't, and that's the brain's way of protecting itself again, so that that pain doesn't keep resurfacing. But that is not healing. It shows that the person is still dealing with that trauma. When you know you have healed from a trauma, when you can talk about the experience and then you no longer have the emotional connection that you had with it when it happened. That's when you know you have healed from it. Yeah. So how to move from accepting it is the next thing. After accepting it, the next thing you need to do is to now look for an empowering meaning, because we are meaning-making machines, MMM, right? Every one of us, we are meaning-making machines. And just like you rightly said, what trauma is usually not what happens to us. It's how we interpret what happens to us. Yeah. In fact, I would like to put it this way. It's not what happens to us. It is what happens in us. So it is usually our perception of what happens to us. It's the meaning we attach to that experience. That's why the same thing can happen to two people and they respond to it differently. For one, it is maybe a tribulation, maybe it was a difficult time. For another person, it was a traumatic experience, majorly because of how they interpreted the situation. So a step further from accepting it would be to now give that experience an empowering meaning. To say what empowering meaning. It doesn't have, empowering meanings are not always positive meanings, but they are just meanings that are rational enough to move you from where you are to where you need to be. And I'll give you an example. If something happens to somebody, you can't say that it did not happen, or it is well. You know, it might not necessarily be well, but you can give an empowerment to say, okay, let's say it was loss. Okay, yeah, I lost this person, but I believe that I can grow to become a responsible member of the society, you know, because there are other people who can also play the same role that this person played in my life. Now, that is not necessarily a positive meaning, but it's an empowering meaning. It's a rational meaning that moves you, that helps you to think about it rationally, instead of just, you know, wallowing in. Because many times, how traumatic experiences develop is people give meanings. People give experiences or events negative meanings. You know, things like, wow, my life is over, my life is finished, I'm good for nothing, I can no longer have good relationships, and things like that. So the moment you begin to give empowering meanings to events, then healing has started. Right? And then you also want to look for a community, because healing can hardly happen alone. We need a community of people. We need support structure and support systems that will help us go through that season of our lives. Could be friends, could be family, you know, as the case may be. Yeah.
I want to ask you a bit of a difficult question here, particularly about this particular perspective of maximizing trauma. Because many people are living with all kinds of things and they don't even know how to get past it. For instance, in my research, I discovered that it is possible to have a blind spot and not even know it's a blind spot.
Sure.
For instance, someone who has gone through some kind of traumatic experience can develop what they call hypervigilance.
Yes.
Now, they can think that hypervigilance is wisdom. Meanwhile, it is fear. They can develop what they call emotional independence, which initially can look like strength, but it is actually inability to trust. They can look at people pleasing. It can look like kindness on its own, but it's really self-protection. We can go on and on and on like that. So anyone who is going to maximize their traumatic experience, some people are never going to go back into politics again because of the traumatic experience they had before. So anyone who is going to maximize trauma, what are the safeguards? That, okay, I'm out of it now. Now I want to maximize, because trauma has an effect on you. You said it the last time you came here. Trauma builds up in the body, causes diseases and all of that. But so they can also help you to develop resilience, develop more empathy and all of that. How do we ensure that the person is working around safeguards and not on tethers?
Yes, and that's where, you, just like we said earlier, you must differentiate between coping and healing. You must understand that the fact coping mechanisms are not necessarily healing, or defense mechanisms are not necessarily healing. So your ability to be able to go through the healing process, come out of it on the other side, have a different perspective where you are no longer reacting to what has happened, but you can say that you've actively learned from that situation, and you don't have a negative outlook or a negative behavior attitude as a result of the traumatic experience. That's when you can say that you have healed from it. For example, where it is that you are not hyper vigilant, but at the same time you are not careless as well. You know, that's when you have learned from it. Where you are not avoidant, at the same time you are not anxious. You know, you are secured in your relationships. That's when we know, okay, that you have actually healed from that particular trauma. So it's the ability to heal from the traumatic experience, you know, and not just to go through go through the motions of trying to cope or trying to defend, in terms of defense mechanisms now, you know, psychological defense mechanisms. That's when we know that, okay, you have actually healed. And it's also important that, and you know, you mentioned blind spots earlier, which is very critical, because your blind spot is what others know about you that you don't know about yourself. That's basically what blind spot is. And that's why sometimes it's important to get feedback from people. It's better to be accountable, to say, okay, you know, what do you think about me? What do you think about this? What are the things, you know, that you have noticed in this area of my life? So get feedback from people. Sometimes people will tell you things that will surprise you. You'll be like, that's not me. But if 1, 2, 3, 4 people say the same thing, then it might be that that's you. It might just be a blind spot. It might be something people know about you that you don't know about yourself. And we all have it. We all have blind spots. You know, then you now begin to work on those areas that you've gotten feedback on, and maybe stay accountable to somebody else as well, and say, okay, you know what, I want to keep me accountable. It could be your husband, it could be your wife, it could be a friend, it could be your therapist, whoever it is. I want to work on these areas of my life. Could you keep me accountable? Whenever I slip up here, let me know. Whenever I say this, whenever I do this, I might not know I'm doing it, but please call my attention to it so that I can recalibrate and reposition myself. And that would help you, for example, heal and deal with those issues.
How easy is that, though?
It's as easy as I've said it.
Oh, no. You know, because sometimes, you know, pride could come in and people really don't want to believe that they're doing that, especially. And then, you know, probably they won't even ask those questions of others in the first place.
So what's important to you, healing or your pride? So you make your choice.
Okay. But pride, there's also say pride is a form of fear. And fear, I just recently discovered, can materialize in so many ways that we don't even know. Many people are living with fear and they don't even know that they're living with fear. Anxiety is a form of fear. Pride, you know, is a form of fear. I don't want this to happen to me, and all of that. And these things kill our productivity, but we don't even know. How easy is it? And I will borrow from Joker's skepticism.
I'm not skeptical.
How easy is it to become wholesome and how long does it have to take to become wholesome after a particularly traumatic experience? Before you answer that question, the person who caused you that trauma, you are still living with the person. You still have to live with the person. Yeah. Not because, and we know that you people have told us, you can't heal when you were at the same place where you were hurt. But here now, you can't go anywhere else. So how do you live a wholesome life when the circumstances don't seem to change?
Yeah. So it's not what happens, it's how you interpret what happens. Okay. So I don't know who said that you can't heal where in the place where the trauma was caused, but I think you can actually. You can actually heal if, for example, just like if you're stuck, say with your partner, with your parent, you can't leave that environment. What do? You have to look for a way to heal. Yeah, you don't understand that. And that's part of what we do, for example, even in therapy, in counseling, to say that if somebody else caused you trauma, I might not be able to change that person. And you come for therapy, for example, I can't change the other person. The person is not in front of me. You are the one in front of me. What I can do is to change you so that even though the person doesn't change, your attitude changes towards the person because your perception of what the person does has changed. Yeah, because that's what determines reaction and response. To say that it is not events, it is not our awareness of events and our environment that causes emotions and actions. It is our perception or belief or thoughts about events, about our awareness of events that actually determines our emotions and our actions. So if I can work on you to change how you are viewing that event, viewing that person, then I can actually make that adjustment in your mind. In fact, I can give you a typical example or illustration to say that. So there's something we use in therapy. It's called the jar of life, and it has 3 levels. It has upbringing, it has environment, it has significant emotional experiences. So where we highlight, these are the things that happen in my upbringing, these are the things that happen in my environment growing up, and these are the significant emotional experiences I've had. Significant emotional experiences are experiences that are significant enough to have altered, changed, or influenced your beliefs, values, or perception of yourself and the world. Now, what we do is, if somebody's causing you distress, let's say it could be a mother, it could be a father, it could be a partner, right? One of the things we say is, go and then write down these 3 things about your partner, how they grew up, the kind of environment they grew up in, the kind of emotional experience that they have had. After doing that, one of the things that changes is a perception of the person that did it towards their partner, because they now begin to see the kind of environment their partner grew up in. They see the kind of environment they grew up in. They see the kind of upbringing they had. They see the kind of experience that they have had.
That has formed them.
That has formed who they are. So now judgment is replaced with empathy. So at the end of the day, we now ask, somebody who has gone through all of this, what kind of person would that person be? What kind of behavior should we be expecting? And you realize that is nothing short of what they're experiencing already. So you now understand why they are behaving the way they are behaving. Because we are products of our trauma. We are products of these 3 things. So it then means that even though that person doesn't change, I can understand why they behave the way they behave. So now they would still talk to me the way they talk to me. They will still behave the way they behave, but my perception of them and why they do what they do has changed. So my response will be different. I will no longer be tensed up and be angry like I used to be. I will understand, because I have now replaced judgment with empathy. I can now say, wow, I understand where you're coming from. I understand what you're going through, right? And that changes the dynamics. I am not leaving them, but how I am relating with them has completely changed.
And this is really very, very interesting. But I'll still want to, because that person that is now empathetic now has to continue to live with that same person, no doubt. But how does that person resolve the issues when they can still see their tormentor, if I can use that term? Because that fellow is still right in front of them.
Yeah.
And you said something, the last time you were here, that we carry these things around anyway, unfortunately, it is possible for us to so internalize them that they become our own default behavior.
Yeah.
You hate what your dad did to you, unfortunately, you became your dad.
True.
You hate what your mom did to you, unfortunately, you became your mom. So how do we escape that trap?
Yeah. So it is many times, somebody rightly said that we have learned from experience and people don't learn from experience. And many times people say, oh, I've learned from this experience, but they haven't really learned from it. Many times people say, I will not do what my dad did. I will never do what my mom did. I will be completely different. And they end up being exactly just like you said, sometimes even worse. Yeah, it's like, press down, shaking together and running over. they become more than even what their dad was or their mom was. Because they were not intentional and deliberate in making the necessary adjustments that they need to make. Because one of the things that anyone who grew up in a certain environment must do, especially environments that you don't want to replicate that are negative, you must expose yourself to a counter environment. Now, it doesn't have to be as much as you did growing up, but you must be intentional in exposing yourself. For example, if you grew up in a family where, in a dysfunctional family where maybe your dad divorced your mom, you see a lot of abuse, abandonment, and things like that, it's important to get another model family where you can see how a family is supposed to work, how a family is supposed to be. If you don't deliberately seek for that, look for that, learn from that, you would most likely, even when you don't want to, reproduce what you have seen, because that's how our psychology works. We reproduce what we have seen. Over time, it enters into our consciousness and formed the boundaries of our values and our beliefs about life. So it's important to now deliberately see an alternative that counters what you have seen over time, so that you can have, a reference point of what works. This is how family is supposed to be. This is how your husband is supposed to behave. This is how your wife is supposed to behave. If you don't have that, you will reproduce what you've seen over time.
We thank you very much for your thoughts this morning. I was seeing a video yesterday. I didn't. Maybe I will go back to it. Of you won't believe it.
What?
Sylvester Stallone. Saying that his father was so abusive.
Why do we have
that? He drove him. In fact, said he didn't know. He thought that was the way things ought to be. So he didn't know better. So he was just. He became very virulent with life, drove himself hard, until later he now saw other family settings. Oh, really? Someone will say, okay, you are talking to your dad. As in, you and your dad, you are having conversation.
Having a conversation.
Banter with your dad.
My daddy said, really, you and your dad, you have conversation. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Miracle Uhoma is a clinical psychologist and family life therapist. Well, he's played the role of our lifestyle guest and artist of the week today.
Drum roll. We didn't do the drum roll for him.
No, don't roll the drum.
Okay.
The next time he's coming, we'll roll it. Thank you so much for the privilege of being a part of your weekend. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your weekend. By the way, I hear tomorrow is it Mothering Sunday or Mother's Day? I don't even know which one it is. Amaya Makinde, enjoy the rest of your weekend.
I'm Joker Rogers.
Happy Mother's Day.
Okay.